My loving and heavenly Father, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, in the quiet corners of our hearts, we find ourselves yearning, aching for something more, something fulfilling. We navigate through life, carrying a weight that is often invisible to the world around us. It's a weight of longing, a pang of desire that resonates deep within our souls. This longing, this yearning, can sometimes feel like a barren wilderness, a vast expanse of emptiness that yearns for fulfillment. Each of us, in our own way, carries the burden of unfulfilled desires. For some, it might be a dream yet to be realized, for others, a love yet to be found. But for many, it's the longing for the sweet laughter of a child, the joy of nurturing a life, the blessing of a fruitful womb. In these moments when our hearts feel barren and empty, we turn to a source of comfort, to a source of hope. We turn to prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, the power of prayer is undeniable, a sacred communication that connects us to you, a plea for mercy and grace. It is through prayer that we can engage in a profound conversation with you, pouring our hearts out, expressing our deepest desires. And the Bible, in Philippians chapter 4, verse 6, encourages us to not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, through prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present our requests to you. Prayer is not just about asking for what we want, but it's also about aligning our hearts with your will. It's about seeking your mercy, your guidance, and your blessings. In the book of James chapter 5, verse 16, we read that the prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. Through prayer, we invite your presence into our barren spaces, asking for your mercy and blessing. It's through prayer that we can experience the miraculous, the transformation, and the fruitfulness that only you can provide. With a heavy heart, burdened with longing, we come before God, our plea echoing in the silence. We stand, not unlike Hannah, a woman of faith who found herself in the throes of deep sorrow, yearning for a child she could not conceive. Our hearts resonate with hers, our tears mingle with hers, our words echo her plea, O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your servant and remember me, and not forget your servant, but will give to your servant a son, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life. 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 11. We are women of faith, yet we find ourselves in the valley of despair, our dreams of motherhood yet unfulfilled. We cry out, our voices lifted in a chorus of sorrowful pleas, O God, see our affliction, hear our prayer, remember us. We draw strength from the words of the psalmist, for he has not despised or abhorred the affliction of the afflicted, and he has not hidden his face from him, but has heard when he cried to him. Psalm 22, verse 24. We stand in the silence of our longing, the echoes of our prayers reverberating around us. We hold fast to the words of Jeremiah, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11. Our sorrowful plea is not a sign of our weakness, but a testament of our faith. It is our declaration of trust in the one who hears, the one who sees, the one who remembers. In the midst of our sorrow, we find comfort in the words of Paul. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. Romans chapter 8, verse 28. In our sorrow, we find strength in prayer, in the promise of God's mercy, and the hope of his blessings. God hears the cries of our hearts, the silent pleas for fruitfulness, for fulfillment. In the depths of our sorrow and longing, we turn to the Scriptures, seeking solace in the words that have provided comfort to generations before us. In these sacred texts, we find the promise of fruitfulness, a beacon of hope in the midst of our despair. Consider the story of Hannah in the book of 1 Samuel, a woman of great faith who was barren. Hannah cried out to God in her distress, and he heard her. In time, she bore a son, Samuel, who became a prophet and a judge over Israel. Her story is a testament to the power of prayer and the promise of fruitfulness. Or reflect on the words of Psalm 128, verses 3 and 4. Your wife will be like a fruitful vine within your house. Your children will be like olive shoots around your table. Yes, this will be the blessing for the man who fears the Lord. These verses emphasize the blessings that come to those who walk in righteousness, promising fruitfulness and prosperity. Let us also remember the story of Sarah and Abraham. Despite their old age, God promised them a son, and though it seemed impossible, that promise was fulfilled. From their lineage came nations, a testament to God's faithfulness and the power of His promise. In these stories and verses, we find reassurance. We see that our pleas are not unheard, our tears are not unseen. God, in His infinite mercy, hears our prayers and has the power to turn our barrenness into blessing. In our moments of sorrow and longing, let us hold on to these promises. Let us remember the stories of those who came before us, who found hope in the midst of despair, fruitfulness in the midst of barrenness. In our longing, we find hope in God's promise of fruitfulness, in His mercy that turns barrenness into blessing. As we conclude our prayer, we find ourselves not alone in our sorrow, but accompanied by a beacon of hope. This beacon, it's not merely a flicker in the darkness, but a radiant light guiding us through our trials. It is the promise of fruitfulness, the assurance of God's mercy, and the power of our faith. Our prayer is not a lament in despair, but a testament to our resilience, a proclamation of our trust in God's plan. We've poured out our hearts, our sorrow, our longing, and in return, we receive hope. Hope that our plea will be answered. Hope that our sorrow will turn into joy. And hope that our barrenness will yield fruitfulness. This is the strength of prayer, the comfort of faith, and the mercy of God. In our sorrow and longing, we find hope and comfort in prayer, in the promise of God's mercy, and the fruitfulness it brings.